It's really interesting. It's kind of funny that she's kind of the one that got the big head. She's a little sassy, she knows what she wants.
From puppet strings to legal papers, Darci's unspoken journey begins. At just 12 years old, Darci Lynne Farmer didn't just win America's Got Talent, she captured the heart of a nation. With nothing but a puppet named Petunia and a voice that seemed to rise from a dream, the shy girl from Oklahoma City stood tall on one of the world's biggest stages. But now, 8 years later, her story has taken a painful turn. That same stage that once lit up with golden confetti has become the center of a courtroom drama no one saw coming. Documents quietly filed in 2024 revealed Darci's shocking accusations of emotional harm and professional mistreatment. And while many fans still remember her bright smile and gentle laughter, what they didn't see were the silent struggles that lived behind those expressions. The very act of speaking through a puppet had once given her courage, but now she's speaking for herself, and for the first time, it's not a scripted voice. It's raw, real, and filled with years of untold truth. What began as a childhood dream has slowly unraveled into a bittersweet reality, and it all started long before she took that AGT stage. Next, we go back to the beginning, where a quiet girl found her voice in the most unexpected way. Long before the spotlight, before the cameras, before the applause, Darci Lynne Farmer was just a quiet little girl in Oklahoma City. Her parents described her as sweet, reflective, and deeply private. Singing, they said, was her safe space, a soft escape from the noise of the world. But standing in front of people, that was terrifying. Everything changed at a small church talent show where she discovered something magical: ventriloquism. It wasn't just a gimmick. For Darci, it was protection. She could speak through a puppet and finally be heard, all without facing the fear of being seen. Inspired by AGT winner Terry Fator, she poured herself into this unusual art. Hours melted away as she practiced in front of a mirror, learning to sing without moving her lips. Her coach, Lisa Bonacquisti, taught her not just the craft, but how to believe in herself. By 10, Darci wasn't hiding anymore. She was performing. And the world, slowly but surely, began to listen. But that early spark was only the beginning. What came next was a whirlwind she could never have imagined. Crowned by confetti, a nation falls in love. In 2017, a 12-year-old Darci Lynne stepped onto the AGT stage with a pink bunny puppet and an old jazz tune. What happened next felt like lightning. The judges were stunned, the audience erupted, and Mel B hit the golden buzzer, showering the stage with golden paper and promise. Within hours, the audition broke records. Darci didn't just win a talent show, she became a national treasure. She toured the country, headlined her own Christmas special, performed alongside music legends, and made late-night appearances as the new face of clean, wholesome entertainment. But behind the glitz, the cracks quietly formed. She was just a girl, juggling homework on planes and memorizing scripts between interviews. Her outfits, words, and even the puppets' jokes were managed by adults. One tour staffer once said, "She was a child in a grown-up schedule." And while the public saw the sparkle, Darci was learning something that no child should. Sometimes the cost of success is silence. And that silence would only deepen as Darci's journey inside the entertainment machine began to weigh heavier on her heart. Cracks in the spotlight, the smile that hid a storm. The applause didn't fade, but something inside Darci did. Beneath the stage lights and smiles, her joy began slipping away. She was still everyone's sweetheart, still selling out theaters, but her days blurred into long rehearsals, marketing shoots, and carefully curated moments. Even her puppets' lines were reviewed and rewritten. The freedom that once made her love performing had turned into a script she no longer owned. Slowly, relationships with the very people who had cheered for her began to change. Whispers of distance grew, especially with Mel B, the judge who once called her brilliant. Even light-hearted banter on stage sometimes carried a weight viewers couldn't hear. In one moment, Darci joked through her puppet, "So guys, what part of I'm singing do you not understand?" The crowd laughed, but insiders say it wasn't a joke. It was a cry for attention. She was growing up, but no one seemed to notice. Still, she kept going, until the moment she dared to come back on her own terms and faced rejection in a whole new way. Going solo, a risk that shook her identity. In 2023, Darci did something that stunned longtime fans. She returned to the AGT stage, this time without puppets. Just her, a guitar, and her voice. It was brave, it was raw, and it was deeply personal. Simon Cowell praised her courage, but others weren't as kind. Some dismissed the performance as a loss of charm. For Darci, it felt like erasure. The same stage that once embraced her now seemed cold. And the girl who had given so much felt for the first time unseen. That performance was more than a song. It was a statement. I am more than a puppet. I am more than a product. But in the weeks that followed, doors closed quietly. Meetings were canceled. Feedback turned cruel. The space she once felt safe in now echoed with rejection. And as she stood in that silence, a decision began to form. Not out of anger, but out of years of being unheard. And when that silence finally broke, it wasn't through a song, but through the most unexpected medium of all, a lawsuit. A voice reclaimed, legal papers with a deeper purpose. In early 2024, quiet whispers turned into headlines. Darci Lynne Farmer had filed a legal complaint, citing emotional distress and professional interference. It wasn't just shocking, it was heartbreaking. This wasn't about fame or revenge. Her legal team revealed that the complaint wasn't driven by money, but by a need to be acknowledged. Leaked documents pointed to a judge she once admired, someone whose words had chipped away at her confidence behind the scenes. The allegations detailed comments that left emotional scars, words that, over time, turned into self-doubt. Fans were torn. Some stood by her, calling her brave. Others said she was turning her back on the show that made her famous. But those close to her saw something else, a young woman choosing herself for the first time. After years of smiling through exhaustion, Darci wasn't suing for fame. She was suing for her voice. And her voice, it turned out, wasn't the only one rising from the shadows of that show. Behind the curtain, AGT's hidden history emerges. Darci's lawsuit didn't appear in a vacuum. As her story unfolded, others began to connect the dots. In 2021, stunt performer Jonathan Goodwin suffered catastrophic injuries during rehearsals for AGT Extreme. In 2022, a mother sued Tyra Banks over her daughter's treatment during filming. And even earlier, in 2018, an elderly woman's tragic fall at an AGT venue led to a wrongful death case. One by one, stories came forward, stories of pain, of neglect, of young and vulnerable performers pushed too far. For years, the show had been a symbol of hope. Now, it stood under a cloud of scrutiny. And while the producers denied wrongdoing, public trust wavered. Darci's courage didn't just open her case. It reopened a conversation about the human cost of entertainment. Suddenly, viewers weren't just watching talent, they were wondering what happened once the cameras turned off. But as the world debated her truth, Darci quietly stepped away, choosing peace over platforms. The quiet after the storm, finding herself again. Following the lawsuit's filing, Darci disappeared from headlines. No interviews, no public posts, just silence. But this time, the silence was healing. Friends described her as tired but free. The pressure was gone. She began performing in small local venues around Oklahoma, far from the glitz of Hollywood. Just her and a guitar. No sequins, no scripts, no puppets. Audiences who saw her said something had changed. She wasn't polished, but she was powerful. Her voice didn't hide anymore. It trembled at times, yes, but it spoke truth. Behind the stage curtains, behind the legal documents, behind the applause, was a young woman rediscovering joy on her own terms. She didn't need headlines, she needed honesty, and she finally had it. But the impact of her stand was far from over, because her story sparked something bigger. A symbol for the silenced, changing the conversation. What began as a single court filing soon became a cultural moment. Darci's bravery opened doors for others to share their experiences. Former contestants praised her anonymously, echoing the emotional toll of sudden fame. Industry insiders admitted what had long been rumored. Young performers were often overworked, creatively stifled, and contractually silenced. Darci wasn't just telling her story, she was holding up a mirror. One of her unreleased songs, said to be titled "Push Our Luck," was inspired by her semi-final return to AGT without a puppet. It wasn't just a ballad, it was a quiet rebellion. Fans who heard early versions described lyrics filled with pain, growth, and finally, hope. In stepping away from the very thing that made her famous, Darci wasn't retreating. She was transforming, from a child with a puppet to a woman with a purpose. And as the world listened, perhaps for the first time, Darci was speaking entirely on her own terms. The final act, the girl who found her voice again. By the end of 2024, the lawsuit remained sealed, but its message rang loud. Darci Lynne Farmer, once known for singing without moving her lips, had finally spoken her truth. Not through a ventriloquist act, not through a scripted TV special, but through unfiltered honesty. Her journey had come full circle. No longer defined by applause or judges' praise, she stood on smaller stages, telling bigger stories. Her voice, once a tool for others, now belonged to her. In a world that often tells young women to smile and stay quiet, Darci chose to do the opposite. She reminded us that fame isn't always a fairy tale, and sometimes the bravest act is not performing, but confronting. Whether her lawsuit wins or not, she's already created change. And perhaps that's the real victory. The next time you see someone chasing a dream under bright lights, remember the story of the girl who spoke for all those who couldn't.